Because some dogs come into your life and they light you up. Others light everything on fire. Welcome back. Today we are talking about the dogs that I loved and the lessons that I learned along the way. This is the story of Apollo, the pit bull greyhound mix that showed me what fierce, full-hearted devotion looks like. Every bruise, every pulled muscle along the way. I'm excited to get into this story. Let's get into it. Ready to have a calm and peaceful life with your dog without the stress of those fear-based behaviors? Hi, I'm Tracy, and I've been there, overwhelmed by all the conflicting dog training advice and unsure of what to do next. But now I help dog lovers like you simplify your life with your dog by building confidence naturally, fostering trust, and addressing those fear-based challenges. So, if you're ready, stop chopping those chicken wieners and let's get to it. Well, hello, my dog-loving friend. It is Tracy. Welcome back to the impromptu mini-series on the dogs I loved and the lessons I learned along the way. I would be remiss if I didn't tell the story of Apollo and everything that incredible dog taught me. To begin with, I have to tell you that I met Apollo. He was a shelter dog. I was running a pro bono program with the local shelter back in the day where the volunteers could drop off daycare or dogs from the shelter to spend the day with us so that it would give them some opportunity to get out and meet other dogs and play and all that sort of stuff. And that's how I met Apollo. And when I came out to greet the volunteer, she got out of the car, walked around the car, and I said, "Hey, is there a reason why this dog hasn't been adopted yet, or what's his story?" And as she opened the back door, this dog flew, and I mean flew out of the car. She grabbed his leash at the last minute. He lunged at my face and he did like these alligator snaps, like just in my face. Alligator snaps, like I'm talking full face of teeth, just snap. And I kind of leaned back and I took the leash from her and I was like, okay, asked and answered. And that's how I met him. That was my very first encounter with Apollo. And I remember her saying, yeah, he does that when he gets really excited. That's his way of greeting people, is to jump at their face and snap at their face. And I'm like, let me guess, it's probably not going over well in the adoption events. And she's like, not really. And I said, well, he'll probably have a good day. Anyway, that's how we met Apollo. And in a very short time of Apollo being with us, we really did fall in love with him. He was an incredibly rough player. He liked to wrestle, but the dog, he could move. So Apollo was a greyhound pit bull mix. So you have to picture a greyhound body with a boxy pit bull head on it. So he was tall and lanky and lean, but muscles, and then the big blockhead of a pitty. And so this guy was just all everything. I mean, he was all everything. Like to kind of give you an idea of the kind of dog he was. When we got him, he was constantly trying to heal a split on the end of his tail because he wagged his tail so violently. Quite often it looked like a helicopter, but in the crates and the kennel at the shelter, he had bashed it and broken it open, and they were having a heck of a time keeping it from breaking open because every time he went back into the kennel, he would break the scabs and it would bleed, and it looked like a murder scene had happened. And we were quite lucky because if you didn't know, I had a horse facility. So our suites were like 10 by 10 horse stalls. And so there wasn't as much likelihood. It was a much bigger run for him. So when he was with us, it had a chance to heal. And because they were having a hard time adopting him, I did the whole like, I'll pro bono keep him for a couple of weeks and we'll see how he does, and see if we can get him to like calm down a little bit and make him a little bit more appealing, less like a maniac that he was. And in that short time, we really did fall in love with him. He was great in the play yard. Like he needed some, don't get me wrong, he needed some guidance. He couldn't go in all bullheaded. We had to match him with the appropriate dogs when we first started, especially when we were, developing a relationship with him, that he had to, when we said tone it down, he had to tone it down, all of that good stuff. But he was so eager to please. He was so eager to do all that. And I really think that he was like loving the play, because I mean, this boy could run and run and run. And we had a huge play yard. Plus we had an indoor horse arena and all sorts of stuff. So, fast forward in my the way that I literally was like, he's going to struggle outside. And if, you know what, it's my podcast, I'm going to tell you exactly why he was going to struggle. I'll tell you exactly why, friend to friend. He was going to struggle because of the policies of the clinic, oh, my head. The policies of the Humane Society about equipment. That is why he was going to struggle through no fault of this dog's own. The policies that they had, I'm just going to say things now because why not? The policies that they had about equipment was going to prevent this dog from being able to live his absolute best life. And he would always probably have to be like in a very high fenced in yard. He'd always have to be walked on a leash. He would struggle with making friends and whatnot because of his intensity and his prey drive. He was challenging to walk because of the intensity of his prey drive. I mean, let's talk about prey drive for a second. He was a greyhound pit bull mix. A greyhound with a pit bull. So his intensity of his prey drive was like through the roof. So people that tried to walk him, if there was a sniff of a squirrel anywhere, he would be pulling towards it. If there was a cat that ran across the street, he would pull you off your feet. If you were using a flat buckled collar and a leash. And while it's great to say we would like to train him with food rewards and all of that stuff and teach him how to heel properly, I will tell you right now, there wasn't a cookie or a sausages or a piece of cheese or a chicken wiener big enough to get this dog's attention if there was prey. And guess what? There was prey everywhere. There was prey everywhere. So he thrived in our daycare because in that environment, his focus was on playing with other dogs. And guess what? Play runs parallel to prey drive. So it allowed him to express those things in a way that was still safe. We had worked with him, so he had an off switch, all of that good stuff. But I digress from my story. The bottom line is that at the end of the day, because of the restrictions put on adopters, saying that they were not allowed to use certain types of training equipment on this dog. And I'm going to say this because I can now. I'm going to say this because I can now. And just so, or should I? No, I'm not going to say it. I won't say it. We'll bring it up some other time. I didn't want this. This isn't a story about. I want to tell the story of Apollo. We're going to stick with that. One day I'll tell the other part. But anyway, my point is this. I ended up adopting him. That's the bottom line. I was like, he's never going to succeed. Well, he might have succeeded, but he would have had so many restrictions on him, and then life wouldn't be fun. Life wouldn't be fun. And, more than anything, I wanted this dog to be able to run. Like, I wanted him to be able to have the freedom to run, because if you had seen this dog's body, like it was meant for running. And anyway, so I adopted him. That's a long way of saying, so I adopted another dog. And this is how I end up with 19. Anyway, that's how Apollo came to be. But he also provided great, he was a great playmate in our play groups. He was a wild child in the play groups, and he was great for many of our play groups. But fast forward, he also was, kind of a pain in my butt for that prey drive, because we well let's just call it be honest. I had a few incidences where he tried to kill my pig. Now, if you didn't know this, I used to have a pet pig. Her name was Cleo, and she was everything. She was everything. I can't explain it. I can't explain why I loved her, but I loved her. I loved her so very, very much. She was a pig, and I loved her. She spent some time in our house, and then I don't wanted this to be a story about Cleo, but the point is, she was my pig, and I loved her. She was a pet, and I loved her. And she was raised in our house, but soon decided on her own, because, not only do I ask the dog, I ask my animals. She decided on her own that she'd rather stay out in the barn. That was a choice that she made. She liked it better. But we had one winter where it was like super cold. Like, it was so, so cold. Like, it was the winter where the frost line dropped below 7 feet. Like, it was super cold. And because the barn that she was in was cold, I was struggling to keep her warm. So I ended up bringing her inside the kennel, because our kennel was heated. So I sacrificed one of the dog runs. It was fine. We weren't that busy. We had the space, but I sacrificed one of the dog runs, and I moved her into the kennel where it was warm. And the one day, and this was my own mistake, I, I was cleaning Cleo's pen, and I didn't latch her door, and I was bringing in the dog groups, and the dogs came in, and Cleo used to like bang the door, and it was just an unfortunate timing. I opened up the door into the kennel when I was bringing the dogs back, and Cleo banged open the door, and Apollo knew she was there. Like, Apollo knew that she was there. Like, all the dogs knew she was there. They could smell her. But on this particular thing, Apollo literally came in, saw that the door was open, and immediately ran down, went into her run. And I heard like Cleo like making all this noise, and I ran down there, and I could not get Apollo off of her. Like, I could not. Like, he had tried to clamp on. Now I'm laughing now because, spoiler alert, if you've never seen a like she was a mini pig, but like the pigs have a lot of neck. Like, a lot of neck. And so, ironically, and I can laugh about it now. In the moment, I wasn't laughing because I thought he was hurting her, but he had his mouth on the top of her neck, and that's just all like skin and muscle. And he was trying to shake her. So his intent was, he was trying to kill her, but she was a short, stout pig, and he couldn't even remotely move her. Like, he was shaking with all of his might. And if you could picture it, it looked like she was just being rocked back and forth, like, like, a soothing thing. And she wasn't even making loud noises. The point, she was like going, been grunting. Like, if I could describe Cleo in the moment, she looked mildly perturbed at this dog that was actively trying to kill her. But in the moment, I was freaking out. Wasn't my finest hour. I could not get him to let go. He was on it, and there was no letting go. I had to actually get a slip leash, and I had to actually choke him out to get him to release his grip off of her neck. Now, for that incident, Cleo came out completely unscathed. She had a little scratch on her ear, but there wasn't even any puncture marks. That's what I mean to say. There was so much there that Apollo's mouth was so open, so wide, he couldn't actually get any, force to actually clamp down on her neck. She was perfectly fine. She was more upset about the fact that I was trying to put polysporin on the scratch on her ear. Like, that bothered her more than anything. But the point of it is that I could not get him to release. And that was sort of like the very first time that I was like, he not only didn't have an off switch, he did not listen to me at all. Fast forward to our big move to here to Nova Scotia. We no longer have the facility, but when we first moved here to Nova Scotia, we bought this place sight unseen. That's a story in itself. We bought this place sight unseen. And so we didn't have it set up yet for all of the animals. So we had the dogs in their kennels in the lower part of our barn. But we had our 3 goats and Cleo there was one like sort of run or stall, I guess, that was in the barn. I think the previous owners had turkeys or chickens or something in it. So we had put the farm animals in there. So they were literally in the same area with the dogs. Not ideal, but we were in the process of like trying to figure out stuff and putting up fences and making runs and all of that stuff. Apollo was in a wire crate. And the one day while I was gone, Apollo broke out of that wire crate. He then proceeded to chew through a 2x4, and he did manage to actually get his head through the 2x4, and he grabbed Cleo and ripped her lip. And I had to take Cleo to the vet to have her face stitched up. To which the vets told me that Cleo was a very nice pig. And I'm like, she is a nice pig. But I remember being so angry at him, like so effing angry at him. Like the fact that, and the sad thing is, and it was kind of true to Cleo's nature. Like she was a pig, so she didn't move. The goats left. Like it was an indoor-outdoor run. The goats saw this dog coming through, and they had left. They were in the outside part of the pen. Cleo, for whatever reason, didn't move, or he got her somehow. I don't know. Anyway, the point is, many vet bills later, because it didn't heal right away, I had to keep it. Yeah, he attacked my pig. Again, this time he actually did hurt her. So, we ended up bringing Cleo into our house again. She didn't like it. She was like, I don't want to live in a house, but she came back up into the house. And then we ended up move the goats. We had to like rearrange our whole freaking life because of Apollo. Just to name a few. And you're like, okay, so Apollo sounds great. The other incident that happened with Apollo was we were coming back from a walk. Apollo is e-collar trained. I will say that, and I make no I make no apologies for that. The e-collar was his key to freedom. It allowed him to be able to live his life running through the woods and chasing squirrels and doing all of that stuff. And to be honest with you, when trained properly, the way that you know that you've done e-collar training properly is when you never have to use it. And I admittingly was at the point where I had stopped using it. So he wore the collar. I had the remote, but I often didn't even turn the collar on or remember to check the collar to see if the collar was on. And essentially, that's what happened to me the one day I was coming back from a walk with him, and one of our barn cats, and our barn cats they're not like typical barn cats that, like, they all have names. They all had vet care, like they've all been spayed or neutered, and we love them, and they're friendly, and we love them. They actually came with us on the trip from Ontario. We didn't leave. We took barn cats with us. This is the kind of people we are. We were like, everybody get in the bus. We're going to Nova Scotia. We grabbed the barn cats. Anyway, I was coming back up. There was a barn cat that was in front of the house, or in front of the barn. I didn't see it in time. And when I did see it, I called Apollo. he did not engage. And that was when I realized I didn't have his collar on. So I was unable to, break him out of that prey drive. And oh, it still hurts me to think of it. He caught the cat, shook the cat. And by the time I got up to him, I was screaming for him to let go of the cat. By the time I got up to him, he did actually, I don't know if the cat scratched him or whatnot, but he did actually drop the cat, and then the cat took off into the forest. I got Apollo and I put him back in his run. And then I spent the better part of the rest of the morning trying to find the cat, which I found, and she was in shock and he was freaked out. And I ended up having to take the barn cat into the vet. And I mean, he did end up, his name was Abraham. He did end up surviving. I ended up having to put him in the barn, and he was on treatment, which for a barn cat, he was so unhappy to be locked up in the barn, and because had him in a crate. Anyway, the whole point of the matter is many, many, many dollars later, I spent so much money on a barn cat to the point where the vet was like, "This is a barn cat, right?" And I'm like, "Yes." And she's like, "Because we could just humanely euthanize him." And I'm like, "I will humanely euthanize him if you think that he's in pain. But if he's not, he was in pain, but if it was like he can't survive this, I will euthanize him." Anyway, long story short, Apollo cost me a boatload of money in damages and attacked pets and stress, honestly. And there were many times in my life where I was like, I do not like you. I do not like this dog. He made me furious and sad and so many things. And there were days that I wanted nothing to do with him, right? I wanted nothing to do with him. I had those talks in my head. I don't know if this is hitting with anyone else. I hope that it is, because I'm trying to be as real as possible. I had those talks in my head where I was like, my life would be better without this dog. My life would be significantly better without this dog. And the contrast too, and that was, I think, the hardest part for me. The contrast between Apollo and my other dogs was so challenging for me, because I had Noofs, right? The Noofs are the Noof. Have you seen the TikToks with the Noof and the pet duck? And they're the best of friends, the Noof and the duck. That was kind of my life. I have Australian Shepherds. They have herding instincts and whatnot, but they're so keen and tuned into me, that I don't have to worry about them. I even have a Jack Russell that has a high prey drive that we used him for ratting in the barn, but he still never ever went after cats, and he never went after anything else. Once he went after a raccoon, but that was I never had this before. And there were days when I was just like, why did I take him? Why, but then the other side of Apollo was that there was such intensity behind everything that he did. And that was the day that I realized that same intensity that he had to chase and to kill things was the same intensity he had to protect me, to love me, and to give everything to me. That dog would walk through fire if I asked him to. And no matter what, no questions asked. This dog would be I remember the one time my kids were helping in the barn. They were coming down, dumping some stuff in the woods, and they had the wheelbarrow with them. And I was coming back, and I can't remember if it was Connor. I think it was like, "Hey, could you think Apollo could get in the wheelbarrow?" And I'm like, "I don't know." And I'm like, "Ask him." And he was like, "Get in the wheelbarrow." And Apollo did. He literally leapt into the wheelbarrow, almost knocked it over. We had to stop it. He fell out, and then he tried again. He was like, "Oh, I fell out." And he tried again. He kept on going. In the same kind of thing, we were in the forest, and we were just doing some fun like, can you get up on this log? Can you get up on this thing? And there was this really high, like one of the trees fell down and it was across the path. And my husband hadn't gotten around to like, cutting it down yet. So we had to like duck underneath of it. That's how like high it was. And at one point in time, I was like, let's see if we can get Apollo to put his front feet on it, like just to jump up on it. And so I was like, hey, Apollo, can you put your feet up? He looked at me and then he backed up and took a run at it and then tried to jump it. And I was like, what are you doing? And he tried to jump it. He hit it with his gut, ended up spinning around the tree and then falling to the ground. Did he not back up and try again? Like, I was like, oh my gosh. And so I was like, no, you're good. You're good. We have pictures of Apollo in a tree. Like, we were like, can you climb that tree? And he'll like, I will climb this tree forever for you. Like, he had that same fire that he had, that same drive that he had to kill the things that I loved, was the same drive that he had to do whatever it was that I asked him to do. And in that moment, I realized, I think the greatest lesson that Apollo ever taught me, and it is one that I share inside the program, The Fearful Dog, is that the same thing that makes you crazy is probably the same thing that you love about the dog. That it's probably two sides of the same coin. And I could see it in so many other instances, but it was Apollo that kind of shone the light on that. This idea that that same thing that made me so angry with him was also the same thing that made me love him so very, very much. And it really is about accepting the whole dog. It's about taking the dog, really, really understanding them and accepting the whole dog. Maybe letting go of the dream of only the positive and just learning to love everything about it. So sometimes the dog that challenges you the most is the one who ends up teaching you the most. Apollo didn't come to be fixed. He really just needed to be understood. And he wasn't the dog that I loved the most, but he sure did love me. And that is really what made me love him back. And so that is the story of Apollo. I mean, there's so many other stories of Apollo. I mean, okay, this one just actually came up to me. There was, so one of the times in one of the daycare groups, Apollo was running. I believe it was Finnegan. Finnegan tried to grab at him as he was running by, and accidentally, it wasn't his fault, but accidentally got his ear and literally took like a little chunk out of it. And if you've ever had a dog with an ear injury, similar to a tail injury, you know how much they bleed. And sure enough, Apollo was like bleeding everywhere. Retired vet tech here, I might add. Okay, so this wasn't my first rodeo of bandaging. I tried every formula of bandaging this dog's ear to help give it some time to heal over, and nothing I did worked. He shook his head. He got out of all the things. We took him to the vet, first of all, to see if there was like, if they could cauterize it, which they did, but it didn't matter. He still shook and he broke the cautery. They had bandaged it. That didn't last. That didn't even last the car ride home, right? I bandaged it with the ear down on his face, with the ear up on his face, with both ears tucked over his head. Like, I had done every iteration of bandaging for this dog and nothing would work. He obviously had a cone on as well. We put a cone on him and it didn't matter. And every single time I went into the room or into his run, he had either gotten the cone off or shook his head so badly that the blood had sprayed everywhere, again, looking like a murder scene. And I kept on calling the vet and I'm like, what else do you got? And I still remember to this day, the vet said to me, we just need this dog to calm down just for a second. She's like, try Benadryl just to calm him down. Nothing worked. Benadryl made him a little bit more crazy, which sometimes happens with Benadryl. But anyway, I digress. The point is, I have all these pictures of him in these bandages because I used to, when he was bandaged, I call him like a little maiden because he looked like he was wearing a little bonnet on his head. But yeah, that took weeks and weeks and weeks to heal, and his tail took weeks and weeks to heal, and he was something. And if you've been following me for a while, you know that many of my videos are of the walks in the woods have Apollo in them. And I think I even have, I got him to wear a GoPro the one time. What a ride that was. If you ever wanted to be on the back of a high prey drive dog, I had a GoPro video on him for a while. Anyway, I digress. The point is, I think the lessons that he taught me was just that the same thing that you hate is probably also the same thing that you love. And when you come to recognize that, when you see it, you'll start to see the dog a little bit differently. And that was my life with Apollo. Apollo also was my dog that I got to learn how to play tug with, and to really try to find a way to be somebody influential with a dog with that kind of high prey drive in the environment. Like, how can I make it so that this dog wants to be with me? But again, I'm gonna call it like it is. The saving grace for Apollo was the equipment that everybody said you should never use. And that's what gave him his freedom and the life that he loved. So fight me on it if you want to. But I always ask the dog, and I think if you had asked Apollo, he had a pretty amazing life with us. So there you go. Hey, if you liked this story and everything we learned, please feel free to share this episode with your friends. Hop into the Living Beyond Obedience group and share your dog's lessons, the lessons that you've learned from your dogs, the stories that you've learned. I'd love to hear from it. If you have a chance, be sure to give us a rating on Apple and Spotify, wherever you're listening to. Anything that you can do to help us push this podcast out to more and more people. If you are somebody that is looking for a little bit more one-on-one help, know that I am always here, and you can book a calm, confident coaching call with me. Just go to beyondobedience.ca/session if you want to know a little bit more about your dog and you haven't already taken the doganality quiz. Do that. Take the doganality quiz. Go to beyondobedience.ca/quiz. Take the quiz. So many things that you can do to stay connected, keep the story going, share this podcast. As always, my friend, get out there today and be the person that your dog thinks you are, because your dog thinks that you're amazing. And so do I. Have a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye for now. Oh, and one more thing. This podcast is meant for entertainment and education purposes only, and is not meant to replace hands-on professional training. If you're really struggling with your dog, please reach out to a professional in your area. All right, I think that's it. Bye for now.